Hey class, it's Marty here. I'm doing my case conceptualization. I'm going to try to make this fairly fast because I've already tried this video a couple times, but technology, and other issues. So let me first start by talking about my placement. I'm interning at the Psychiatric Hospital Inpatient Unit here in Fargo, North Dakota. And so my patients are only there for a short amount of time, and they usually have some pretty acute illnesses and often are suicidal. Most of the time are suicidal or have psychosis. And the primary thing, really the only thing that they have me doing, is the intake assessments and group therapy. So the person I'm going to talk about is just the most recent person I did an assessment for, and we'll call him Bob. And Bob is in his 40s. I believe he's 47. And he is a white male Caucasian who is married, but back in February separated with his wife. So they're no longer living together. And he came to the hospital voluntarily because he was having suicidal thoughts, thoughts of jumping out of a 3-story building, or thoughts of stabbing himself with a knife at work. And he decided that he needed help, and so came in on his own. Which is really great that he decided to seek help and understood that he needed that. Um, so, like I said, he's separated from his wife. Now, what makes this situation a little more interesting is that he is currently living with his stepdaughter, and he, over the course of time living with her, and maybe before that too, started to develop romantic feelings for her. And they're not blood related, but until he's divorced, they are technically father and daughter or stepdaughter. Sorry, did I say daughter-in-law? Stepdaughter. And he has feelings for her, and that's an interesting situation. On top of that, last week he said his uncle died, and his uncle was pretty close to him, and that was pretty difficult. So, in response to that, he got pretty drunk, and in that time, he exposed himself to her, which probably made things pretty awkward around the home. But he said things around the home are good, and that they've had a normal relationship, short of him having feelings for her, I guess. But he described it as normal. And he said that she also deals with mental illness and bipolar disorder. And so his way of saying it was that he was so concerned about her getting the help that she needs is that he started to go downhill, and that's what brought on the suicidal thoughts. So kind of a interesting way of putting it, an interesting turn of events that brought all that about. He was raised by his dad and his stepmom. He does not have any reported history of abuse or trauma. He has a lot of siblings, I believe like 9, but he said that they don't speak very much at all, so weren't really much of a support system for him. His social supports was, I believe he mentioned his dad, this stepdaughter. I think those were the 2 primary ones. He also has a couple friends who he plays pool with because he works at the pool hall in town. His strengths is that he was really friendly, really easy guy to talk to, which is nice. He does have a job. Like I said, he works at the billiards hall. He's got a very supportive father. I talked to his father on the phone as well. Deficits is that he has trouble coping. He struggles coping with his anxiety and depression. He said he has had it for many years, however. But I guess recently it just got to a point where couldn't feel like he could handle it anymore. Had these thoughts about killing himself, but that leads to another one of his strengths is that he recognized that and did seek help voluntarily. So diagnostic impression would be depression and anxiety with suicidal ideation. The theoretical framework I'm going to use is the one that I have to use at the hospital, which is ACT therapy, acceptance commitment therapy. And without explaining the whole thing, if you are or not familiar with it, acceptance is kind of against the normal cognitive theory of disputing your beliefs and trying to convince yourself through evidence that you're having irrational thoughts. Acceptance is more like just accepting for what they are, for being just thoughts and not something that you have to act on. And goodness sakes, sorry, I'm at my school and there's things going off. So after you accept your feelings, then you have a committed action towards something that you value in your life. And that part is really behavioral. It's very much in line with behavioral therapy. So in this guy's situation, ACT therapy would be saying that, hey, even though you have anxious thoughts and depressive thoughts, accepting those for just being thoughts, making room for them in yourself, and then thinking about what you really value in life. So for this man, what would that be? Would that be pursuing a romantic relationship with your stepdaughter when you're still married to somebody else? Well, that's what the therapy might say that you should do, which is where I have an issue with secular counseling, because that is not my theological, philosophical view on life, is that personal autonomy is the king. Personal autonomy is the greatest thing. But that's kind of the mindset that the world lives in right now. So, so in my group therapy, I'll be teaching things like cognitive diffusion and committed action towards values. But from a spiritual framework, what I'd really want for this man is, of course, to find Christ. He said that he does not have a religious belief. He said he was baptized Catholic, but that's about as far as it went. But otherwise, he doesn't believe in God. He's undecided. Well, he's not that he doesn't believe. He's undecided about what he believes in God. And from my biblical, I'm just going to call it Christian counseling perspective. I don't know if I would say it's a biblical counseling perspective by that definition. But from my theological orientation, I believe it does all start with what a person believes about God, and that is the most important thing about them. And we want clients to come to see God as absolutely holy, absolutely all-powerful, all-knowing, all-perfect. And from that, a right response is what Isaiah did in chapter 6, is fall on your face and say, woe is me. I believe that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. I think that should be a big part of counseling, is seeing God for who he is, but it can't stop there, obviously. We don't want people just to be afraid of God. Hand in hand with that, we need to show God's grace and God's love and Jesus Christ, who paid the penalty for our sins so that we can be close to this almighty, fearful, awesome God. So seeing God's justice, seeing God's love, both together in unison, I think creates a full picture of who God is, and therefore people can find security in knowing that they are loved by God. And so for this person, he can have security in his anxiety and in his depression, because there is a great God who cares about him, a God who is quick to have mercy on him for those who come to him. And I would just want this to find that. I'm going to stop video here and start video number 2.